Some viewers may find the following video disturbing. Viewer discretion is advised.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Board Games Unlocked, and today I'm doing a no-run-through review for Critical Foundation Season 1. This was a game that was actually announced, I think it was announced prior to, or at least definitely advertised around Gen Con this year in 2022, by Gigamic, a company that has done only one other game that I'm aware of, that I have personally played, and that was Turing Test. And this one was extremely intriguing just because this was advertised as a tabletop RPG where it's episodic and each episode lasts about 30 minutes. And that was like, okay, cool. Like if they're able to condense the types of role-playing into about a 30-minute episode, and there's 9 episodes in the box, and that's Season 1, so obviously they have plans for more. Sure, let's give that a shot. And they're half right. Okay, so this is a little weird because I planned on doing this as a run-through or as a series on the channel, but it's just, I do so many series on it and or on the channel that I just got to make cuts somewhere. And because the group that I play this with, I've been playing D&D with for years, and so we have a very certain type of play style that this game does not mesh super well with that. So, with that being said, I think that Critical is a great entry point for a group that has never played a tabletop RPG before, and for a DM that has never DM'd before, or GM, or whatever you want to call it, because there's 2 ways to go about this. You can review this as if it's trying to compete with things like D&D, with Pathfinder, Starfinder, etc., and then this is complete garbage. That's not at all what this is supposed to be, and I don't think that that's what they intended. But if you're saying, hey, it's an RPG that's in 30 minutes, that doesn't make any sense. So, what it is a RPG light that allows players who have never touched any of those I just previously mentioned before and see if they like it. And I think that this succeeds extremely well at that, because of the fact that it's isolated into 30 minutes or longer. I mean, the DM can elaborate a little bit more, but if you're trying to play the game the way it's designed, it is very heavily walls around the players, and they're on the rails as well. And the DM also doesn't have a whole lot to go on, because it's well, I didn't create this world, I'm not making this story, I'm trying to tell the story that's in the box, and so that's I'm very limited as to the information that I'm given and what I can tell you and what you guys can do. So, if you're experienced in any, TRPG, I don't know if this is quite the game for you, because it's going to feel extremely restrictive. Hell, so personally as a player, I don't like modules. That's just me personally, Ravenloft or Icewind Dale. I just don't like those because I know they're doing the same thing. They're this is a book that's trying to tell a story. The DM has a lot of leeway, but he still has to kind of stick with the book. Otherwise, just make your own story. There's a place for those. I totally get that. And there's a place for this. So basically what it is the DM has or the GM, they have to call it. The GM will read the episode, understand who the NPCs are, understand, what options that they're given. And I'm not going to spoil really anything from this, just because it is its own self-contained story. But a slight example is in one of the episodes, the episode tells the GM, hey, you can play this in one of 2 ways. You can either do this, or you can do this, but it doesn't really matter either way. But it just depends on what kind of atmosphere you want to bring. Do you want to make it tense and, plausible that the players can succeed here? Or do you want to make it feel oh man, this guy is just way too powerful. We don't know if we're going to be able to beat him, yada, 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 and then just make him feel hopeless, but then do something else in the later episodes. You're also restricted with the cards that are coming in the box. So each episode basically gives the players, hey, here's the items you're given, here's what the GM is going to need, and behind his screen. It does come with a screen, which I was very pleased with. I think they did a good job. The screen is actually very, very nice. Everything in the box is well nice. This works just like a D&D screen, where it has all key elements, dice checks, combat, and then attributes and skills. And so what a general D&D screen would have. And so you keep all the pertinent information stuff behind here, and it's like, oh, okay, so they asked about this, so boom, here's your stuff. But like I said, at the end of the day, the characters can only ask a certain amount of stuff. They can only do a certain amount of stuff. Combat is very quick, which I personally like because I don't like combat. And the role-playing is also light, which, once again, not for me or my group, but I cannot, emphasize enough how amazing that this is for players who have never touched an RPG, because it's so foreboding to try and, because if you're like, oh yeah, okay, we all hang out together, we play games, let's try and do an RPG, and you don't have a DM, some people might know someone who DMs, but they have their own group, so then it's like, okay, well now we need to find someone who wants to DM, and that's its own thing that person has to basically make a job of. And you kind of have to do that here. Someone has to be the one running it, but it's very refined. Like, they're not overwhelmed with, I have to make a world, or I have to read this entire book. The players can't really, just go off the rails to, throw a wrench in things. So then you don't have to worry about, coming up with stuff on the spot. If players are asking about certain things, I'll spoil episode 0 because it really is nothing. It's hey, here's the bare minimum of the rules. Once you're comfortable with that, then you go to the actual game, and here's a little bit more rules. Glad they have it, but entirely skippable. But there's a point where they have to raid in episode 0, the prologue, which is 10 minutes. They have to raid a base. And if they go to the area with the base and they want to go to because there's a little card that shows the compound, it's we want to go here. You just say nothing there. Or, you can hype it up a little bit, but it's you search for a little bit and still find nothing of interest. And they're we go here, nothing of interest. So obviously it's yeah, you're meant to just go to this one area that is in the episode that I can give to you. So that's very relieving if someone is forced, or they choose to play the GM. And then on the player side, they're given characters, they choose it back, but still very restrictive. It's okay, you have these 4 characters, these are the 4 class types. You pick a background, but there's 2 cards that you can choose from that's specifically assigned to that class. The character sheet is very clean. I'm not going to pull them out, but you they have your 4 attributes. You're good at one of them, which just means when you're told to do that specific check, you add 1 to it, and then you can kind of roleplay a little bit, but you don't have to come up with this massive backstory. You don't have to actually mold and play as a certain character. You're just very okay, this is kind of the overall skeleton that I'm gonna play as in this world. But you can only ask certain things. If it's hey, here's what's going on, you can be oh, okay, who's the enemy? Where's the item? And then most of the time, especially when I was playing, my players just knew what to ask. Or what's kind of cool and very surprising of this is if they even ask in a roundabout way, it's oh, okay, they even kind of thought of that, because while this is what's directly in here, if they're meant to specifically ask about this, well, they kind of asked about it, so sure, then I can just give them that information. There was one moment in one of the scenarios where something was happening, and a player didn't, he wanted to do something, but the episode didn't specifically say if they could do it, but it still worked out in the actual story, just because there is enough wiggle room that the GM can work with something like that. And it's not so rigid that you might as well just read it out and just see what the story is. Players can roleplay, they do get to make their own actions, And the GM can go with the flow a little bit, but still at the end of the day, you got to follow the episode. And they're short. 30 minutes goes by like that. It's very quick. So would I say that 30 minutes is enough time to get a RPG feel? For my group and me, I would say no. But I think for a lot of people that have never touched this type of game, yes. I think 30 minutes would be good. It's 30, 45. Like if the GM is really kind of like amping it up and really getting into the scenes. But at the end of the day, that's huge because my sessions, like whenever I'm playing, which is like they're like 5-6 hours, like that's just what we do, and that's a lot. That's a lot for a lot of people. So you can, because there's not a lot of episodes in here, you can just kind of just enjoy it. Just pick an episode, like do it once a week, like and then play something else. Like this doesn't have to be your whole night. It could be. You could just sit down for one Saturday and just go through all of them and then really get into the world. But then you're like, I kind of want season 2 out now. So very interesting concept. I think that they did do a really good job with this. It is in a cyberpunk-esque world. I think that's cool. And so also let me talk about some of the actual game mechanisms. I've been talking about the whole RPG concept. The game mechanisms are very clean, very simple. I know a lot of people are turned off by playing certain characters or even getting into a TRPG just because it's a lot of rules or it's a lot of math. All that is out the window. You basically have equipment that's like, hey, here's how many uses it can do. Here's your weapon. It adds 1 to damage. All the numbers are very low. So when you're doing damage, you roll a die. It's like, oh, and a combat is very simple. It's just like, oh, okay, I want to shoot this guy. It's like, okay. And then they roll. It's like, okay, to shoot, it's a physical check. It's whatever. So they roll, and you roll a d12, but the numbers only go from critical failure to 3, I believe is the highest. And the GM has the enemy card. It has a difficulty, so it's like, okay, yeah, so you shoot. And they're like, okay, I got a 3. Perfect. Yeah, and then you can amp it up. If the difficulty's 3, they hit. And it's just 1 damage. Sometimes it might be 2. You might be able to drop them in 1 hit, depending on their health. And you know, if the enemies take damage or if the players take damage, it's 1 wound. Or they might, but they can only ever take 2 max wounds. If they take a 3rd one, then they go down. You can critically fail, which obviously doubles the negative effects. You can also critically succeed, which is like, because critically succeeding in D&D is rolling a nat 20, failing is a nat 1. In this, it's like, okay, the GM knows, okay, to do this, it's a difficulty check of 2. If someone rolls and they get a 4, well, they critically succeeded, because as you critically succeed when you double the difficulty check. So if they're scaling a wall, it's like, and they roll a 4, or they get a 4 total, then it's like, oh yeah, you just like basically run and just grab it and leap all the way over and look super badass doing it. Or if they're like, yeah, I rolled the X and critically failed, it's like, yeah, you failed, you tried climbing over the wall, slipped and landed on your neck, and you would have taken 1 wound, but now you're taking 2, so your neck is all messed up. You can just do whatever you want. But they do something in here that I very much like, is that if you critically fail, you're given a compensation token, and this is for like the group, and you can have a max of 4, and players can spend those at any time to add a d8 to their d12 roll. I really like that. I think, again, this is very much geared towards people who have never been in a TRPG before, because of that. Because in every other thing, if you critically fail, it's usually very bad for you. And they didn't want to have that, man, I keep failing. It's like, yeah, so here's something to really make you feel, yeah, you failed this time, but now you're going to use that token to shoot this guy. And yeah, the difficulty is 4, but you rolled a 3 with your +1, and you rolled the d8 and got another 4. So you got a critical success this time, and you wing it, but what really happened is actually it ricocheted and shot him in the back of the neck. You can just do whatever you want. It does allow for that. So I'm like, I have had a good time with this. I think a lot of people should check this out, because it could be a turnoff where it's like, really, like, I don't think it's going to be enough. I think it is enough. I think you can still have a solid, fun, light time. You don't have to be too stressed about it. Or this would definitely tell you if you're ready, or if people would like a actual, big, tabletop RPG. So this one was actually kind of weird to actually give a score for, because it's like, yeah, this obviously isn't geared for me, even though I did have a good time with it. I think if they do support it with more seasons, and this just doesn't die off, and they're like, oh, we did this and we just made one season, then that would be kind of lame. But based off whenever I was talking to them at Gen Con, they did say they had plans for more, so I'm going to take them at their word. So yeah, I'm going to give Critical Foundation Season 1 an 8. Like, I think it does a really good job for what it intends to do. And even for my group and the players I was playing it with, we still had a good time, and it was super fun because we didn't have to feel like we were ruining characters or, pissing other people off by doing certain things, because it is kind of nice every now and then to be on rails, to just go through a story instead of be stressed out about trying to make this everything epic. So that's my thoughts on Critical Foundation Season 1. Let me know what you think of the game in the comments below. Other than that, like, comment, share, and subscribe, and have a wonderful whatever time of day it is for you. Hey everyone, thank you for watching, and I really hope that you enjoyed the video. If you would like to see more of my content, go ahead and click that subscribe button and the bell to be notified whenever I upload any new content. If you feel like supporting the channel, you can go ahead and click that Patreon link to be taken to my Patreon, and any help is truly appreciated. Other than that, stick around for any other run-throughs or reviews or cool top 10s or whatever I feel like putting on. Other than that, like, comment, share, and subscribe, and have a wonderful whatever time of day it is for you.